The 4-year-old is wearing some blue dinosaur boots.
Police say they found a boot print. And listen to this in the radio chatter.
Families brought us to a location there, not far away, that there's a piece of a blanket.
Police won't say anything about a blanket, but Martel says a piece of Lily's blanket was found near the boot print. He says both children may have undiagnosed autism.
This update on the search for Lily and Jack Sullivan raises some huge red flags, so in today's video let's watch it together and break them down. I'll also reveal how I would have asked their stepfather about them if he'd ever accepted my interview invite. I'm Deception Detective, an attorney trained in statement analysis. This channel exposes lies and manipulation, so if that's your thing, hit subscribe. For exclusives and other cool perks, join the channel. Link in description. I assume most of my subscribers are familiar with the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan from Nova Scotia, but even if you aren't, don't worry because this update gives a really solid recap. So there's just one last thing I want to say before we grab our deception decks and start watching, and it's this. Hoaxing is really, really hard. A hoaxer can't just make up a story and call it a day. Their hoax has to sound plausible, it has to match any evidence the police or searchers might ever find, and it has to be simple enough to memorize perfectly. And if they can somehow do all that, they're still not out of the woods. They have to be able to deliver that story convincingly under pressure, while at the same time making sure never to have a slip of the tongue and accidentally reveal the truth. In other words, hoaxes are fragile things, and if you ask the right questions and phrase them the right way, you might just be able to get them to crack. So without further ado, let's watch.
Do you think those kids are in the woods?
From everything I've seen, yes. We got the first call shortly after 11 on Friday morning on the 2nd that there was 2 children lost up here in Lansdowne, and we just deployed the team and got here as fast as we could.
And when you got that first call, did anything stand out about that first call as unique or unusual?
It's not common to have 2 lost subjects in that kind of scenario. So with kids like that, it's not common to have the 2. It's not uncommon, so a pair of hikers is overdue or something like that. But with kids, it is a little uncommon to have 2 gone missing.
Have you found anything?
The only thing that we had was the boot prints that everybody, and we still cannot 100% say that they belong to the children, but that was pretty much the only thing that we had.
You think they're in the woods?
I have not been told anything to lead me to any other conclusion at this point.
Why can't you find them?
They're small, they'd be hiding. They would have crawled underneath something probably when they got tired. They could have gone further than what we searched. There's all kinds of scenarios, unfortunately. So we're on Lansdowne Road. It was in one of the areas that was searched extensively, as you can tell from like the flagging tape in the woods. So when teams are tasked, they get a bearing or a waypoint or both for where they are to start. So they come down into the woods and they'll tie a ribbon so they know where their start point is. And then they start on their compass bearing into the woods. As you can see another flag. So this is where they were going straight into the woods. So they're following their bearing, putting their flag line down and searching at the same time. Coming up through all of this stuff.
How much of this is down because of Fiona?
A lot of this is down because of Fiona, and some of it could have come down after the fact, but the vast majority of it was probably from Fiona. So grid searching comes in different types. So we have type 1, type 2, and type 3. A type 1 is fairly open. So if we're looking more for signs of travel or say larger objects, so if we know they have a backpack or something like that, we can space people out, 10, 20 meters apart. And especially if we think somebody's going to be responsive, so they're going to talk to us when they're calling to us, we'll do open. We were doing closed grid or type 2, so teams were very close together because we were expecting children to be hiding.
I have an entire card in my deception deck about interviewing hoaxers and getting them to slip up. I'll put it on your screen in a moment if you want to read the full rule, but the gist is if you can increase their cognitive load, or the amount of thinking they need to do in a short period of time, the more likely they are to slip up. In this case, if Daniel had accepted my invite for an interview, I would have asked him about that radio chatter I played at the intro to this video, where the searcher said that he and the kid's mother, Malaya, were the ones who directed them to the area where they found the boot print. Because if he's a hoaxer, he's probably the one who planted that stuff there in order to sell the hoax that the kids wandered off. And if that's the case, like any good hoaxer, he'd probably already have a prepared answer for any direct question about how he found that boot print there. So the trick to getting him to slip up would be to ask the question in a way that increases his cognitive load. Like asking him to recount finding the boot print in reverse order, which is much harder for liars to do, because they're not relying on real sensory memories. Or asking a surprise question, something he's unlikely to have prepared for, or an extremely detailed question that he and Malaya are unlikely to answer the same way if they both get asked about it. For example, off the top of my head, who was walking in front when you guys found the boot print? Who was walking in front when you guys first entered the woods? Did you guys ever swap places? Did you notice anything else unusual during the hike? Did you see any animals? If one of them says yes, let's see if the other one also says yes, and let's see if they say the same animal. Stuff like that. I've gone over these techniques so many times in my old videos that I don't want to spend too much time rehashing them here in this one. Instead, I want to show you some new techniques, and a good opportunity for one is coming up next. So let's keep listening.
A lot of children that age range will hide. So if we're 20 meters apart in some of these woods, you can't see 2 feet away from you. Like there would be places where teams would be almost able to touch their fingertips together and they couldn't actually see each other through the bushes. It's that thick in places.
So how does this compare to what your teams have been dealing with?
This is actually fairly mild compared to some of the areas.
Mild. It looks like such a mess.
It does look like a mess, and you got the thorn bushes and the deadfalls, but there's places that are actually a lot worse, but there are places that are a little bit better as well.
Mm-hmm. But what would be worse?
A lot more deadfall. You can get places where it's just deadfall on top of deadfall on top of deadfall, and you literally have to crawl underneath of it or climb over top of it.
You were also saying, though, to the general public, don't come help us. Why did you say that?
We don't want the general public in the area because we use a lot of very specialized assets like canines that are looking for the freshest humans that they can find. So if we have somebody from the public go through an area and we don't know, but we were deliberately waiting to send a canine into that area, that canine could get on the track from that person, and then we've just wasted that resource because once that dog's probably done its track, they're probably exhausted and can't go out and do anything else. And same as drones, if we're flying a drone over the area and we get a heat signature from somebody in an area and we can't identify who or what it is, then we have to send GSAR resources in or police resources to confirm who that is. And in the same breath, a lot of it comes down to training. So our people are trained to look for the little things, the footprints, the pieces of clothing that are discarded, the broken branches, the spots where somebody might have crawled in underneath something and had a nap or something like that. So they're very clue sensitive is what we call it. They're clue finders. So we're not just looking for the 2 children. We're looking for all the evidence of them going through the area, which is a big part of what we do. So when the boot print was found, we told the team just to send us the coordinates. We got a picture. Yeah, it looks like a children's rubber boot print, which is what we were looking for. Conversed with the incident commander. Yeah, we're going to send. We sent an RCMP canine in first. Then we sent human tracking teams, so like man trackers. So we have some members that have been trained to do tracking themselves. We sent them in and we did some grid searching in the area to see, just to follow up. And then the RCMP forensics unit went in and did actually a cast of the boot print.
If you've been following my analysis of this case since the beginning, you'll know that Daniel Martel said in his early interviews that he spent a lot of time in the woods searching for Lily and Jack before the police even got there. I assume that's how he explained finding that boot print. It also conveniently would explain any other trace of him in those woods because he could say that that trace came from when he was searching for Lily and Jack, not out there hiding them. But that's the smaller of the 2 points I want to make here. The reason I paused is because now we've learned that him going out there and running around in the woods was actually detrimental to the search. Maybe if a searcher had found the boot print rather than Daniel, the sniffer dog might have had a better chance of tracking where Lily and Jack went after leaving that boot print. We'll never know, and that's the point. Because hoaxers often don't feel the emotions they should be feeling if their story were true, like regret or curiosity. I've never seen Daniel appeal to any potential kidnappers out there, even though the kids vanished without a trace. But most of all, hoaxers forget to be suspicious, and that's because being suspicious is really risky. If Daniel and Malaya are actually in it together, pointing their fingers at each other to appear innocent could make the police look deeper into them and end up cracking the case. And that's the dilemma I would have liked to present to Daniel if he'd let me interview him. You either have to point the finger at Malaya and tell us that you don't know for sure she didn't do anything, or explain to us how you know she's innocent when your very own alibi says that you were sleeping for part of the time when the kids disappeared. Let's keep watching.
We did investigate a few wells and mine shafts. The teams came across them in the woods, so they would look in them as best they could. There was one mine shaft we actually ended up flying a drone into to see if there was any sign of anything going in there because it wasn't safe to send the people in. And there was no sign of any disturbance or anything inside the mine shaft. So I know they're still doing investigation. Anytime a tip comes in, they follow right up on it. So,
do you feel it's been searched as well as it can be searched?
what has been searched very well, very extensive. With over 12,000 hours put in on the search. It's pretty much unheard of in this province. All searches are hard unless we have a good ending, obviously, but some hit closer to home than others do. There was members that couldn't bring themselves to call the names, but other people on the team were, so it wasn't impeding the search effort, but because of personal reasons, they couldn't actually physically call for the names themselves.
They just couldn't say the words.
They couldn't get it out, no, for whatever reason they had. And there was people coming to the end of it that, whether it was physically, they were just exhausted, or mentally exhausted, that couldn't return to the search area as well. So we saw a little bit lower numbers on some of the revisit searches that we did with some of the teams.
For that first weekend search, after, the searches scaled back on May 7th,
Yeah.
What were you told when you got that call? Like, why were you going back?
It was actually a conversation. I was meeting with Major Crimes on a regular basis, going through the paperwork from the search and showing them what was covered and what wasn't covered. And it was actually a conversation had between us that, yeah, there's some areas that we would like to go in and get covered off, either better or new areas that we said, well, there's a possibility, so we want to just go search those areas as well. So it's not uncommon for us to go back to a search if we haven't found something.
What prompted then the second weekend search?
Basically the same thing, just more areas that we really wanted to see get covered and just expand out on what we had done.
So just to be clear, it was not as a result of new information?
It was not, no.
I think it gave some people in the public hope.
Yes.
Like, oh, maybe they found something there in that area they're looking. It wasn't that.
It was not. So it was just that we wanted to extend out our search area and cover off areas. Most of these people, they're all volunteers. They just want to find the kids and bring them home. So they're more than willing to keep coming back and keep searching. Unfortunately, at this point, unless something comes up, we're probably not going to be back. But that being said, somebody could find something that brings us back.
As she said, they're unlikely to ever come back and continue looking for Lily and Jack unless they have some good reason to, which if I were interviewing Daniel, I would have used to open the door to one final technique I want to cover in this video, the devil's advocate question. For example, Daniel, I know you're innocent and Malay is innocent and so is everyone else who lived on the property, but just for a moment, let's play devil's advocate. If we wanted to find that bit of evidence that could compel the searchers to come back, where should we look? The reason this question type is so effective for catching hoaxers and liars is because they still want to appear cooperative, so they'll still answer your question. And because they know the truth, whether it's because they're guilty or they know who is guilty, they often answer the devil's advocate question with far more detail and conviction than they tell their own fake made-up story. In other words, even if he didn't tell me exactly where to look to find evidence of what happened to Jack and Lily, just by comparing his vague, nebulous alibi to his answer to a devil's advocate question, you could get a better sense of whether or not he's lying. Plenty more techniques like plans and sketches which we can cover in another video. If you want to do that, let me know by liking, commenting, and sharing. Till next time, stay true.